What's up guys, it's River and today we're looking at my favorite cameras for photography. Not only are these cameras great for taking photos, but they're also a really good value for the money. So sit back and relax and make sure to watch this video all the way through because it is jam-packed with information. Let's get into it. By the way, if you're new to the channel, we talk about anything and everything to do with camera gear, from entry level all the way to high-end professional gear, plus teaching you guys how to take better photos and videos every single day. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, make sure to like and subscribe. Plus, all of the products that we talk about today will be listed down below in the description, so make sure to check that out. Let's get into the video. And the first camera on the list is actually the world's best-selling DSLR, plus it is also the most affordable camera on this list. And that is the Canon T7. It has a 24 megapixel sensor and photo-wise, it does 3 frames per second, which is kind of slow, but it's pretty decent considering the quality of the image you get. The 24 megapixel sensor is actually the same sensor that you find in the higher end $800 or $1,000 Canon cameras, while this camera is only $399. When it comes to the actual image quality, there is almost no difference between this camera and the higher end models. And one of the biggest reasons to get this camera, or really any Canon camera, is the color science. When it comes to Canon cameras, the photos and videos look good right out of the camera without any editing, and the best thing about these cameras is that the skin tone always looks good, so if you shoot people with it, they always look attractive. And this camera does have video. It does full HD up to 30 frames per second with no 4K, but I won't really talk too much about video simply because this video is about best photography cameras. However, I will mention this. The autofocus in this camera is phenomenal when it comes to photos, but when it comes to the video side of things, it is abysmal. Do not use this camera for video, but if you're gonna get this as a starter hobbyist photo camera, it is an absolute must get. And despite this being an affordable budget camera, the body and design of this camera is impeccable and still feels very premium. You get a nice, robust DSLR style body that will absolutely hold up to anything you throw at it. Plus, just the style of a DSLR body feels nice and beefy in your hands. It's just satisfying to use. When it comes to the ergonomics on this camera, all the buttons are exactly where they should be, and it's a really nice user experience. And the menus on this camera are really well laid out and easy to navigate. Honestly, the ergonomics when it comes to Canon cameras is amazing. Anybody, even if they have little to no experience, can pick up this camera and get great results. The only downside to this camera is that the screen is fixed and you can't flip it out to see yourself, but if you are someone that's going to be taking a lot of photos of yourself and you want to be able to see yourself, have no fear. There is a camera later on this list specifically for those type of people that need to shoot themselves, but that's probably the only con of this camera. The Canon T7 has a fixed screen that sadly does not move. However, if you're somebody that wants a starter DSLR that doesn't break the bank but gives you a little bit more horsepower than the Canon T7, the next camera I have for you is the Nikon D35. The D35 also has a 24 megapixel sensor. However, instead of 3 frames, the Nikon D35 actually shoots 5 frames per second, which may not sound like a lot, but you will definitely notice those 2 extra frames, especially when you're shooting at such a low frame rate. The thing that really sets the Nikon cameras apart is the fact that the color science in these cameras is very neutral. Nikon images are meant to be edited very, very heavily. You will get way more flexibility with the RAW files from a Nikon camera versus a Canon camera. And the Nikon D3500 actually has 12-bit RAW versus the Canon T7 10-bit RAW. However, in case you're new to cameras and you don't know what RAW format is, basically it's a professional file type. It's only really necessary to know about if you plan on doing any kind of serious work with your photos. If you're just a casual shooter, this is just for social media and sharing with families, I would just shoot the normal JPEG files and you don't really need to worry about RAW. On top of that, the Nikon D3500 also has video capabilities, which does full HD up to 60 frames per second, and the autofocus in this camera is good, both in photo mode and video mode. So if you're someone that wants to take a lot of photos and just shoot video here and there, this camera might be a really good fit for you. And the Nikon is also a DSLR style body. It has a nice, robust, beefy feel in your hands. However, the ergonomics on the Nikon camera are not quite as good as the Canon camera. It is definitely a camera that you need to sit down, figure out where all the buttons are. It's not quite as intuitive. I would recommend the Canon camera to somebody that's a casual shooter that just wants to pick up a camera and have fun with it, but the Nikon camera is really made for somebody that wants to sit down, learn the camera, and make thoughtful and methodical photos with it. And sadly, just like the Canon T7, the Nikon D3500 also has a fixed screen that does not move, so it does give you a bit of a struggle if you're trying to do low or high angle shots, especially if you're trying to shoot yourself. But what if you're somebody that wants to take beautiful photos, but you need all the things that the Nikon and Canon camera are missing? In that case, for you guys, I have the Fuji X-T30, which is actually my favorite camera on this list. The Fuji X-T30 offers a whole lot more horsepower for just a little bit of a price bump. The Fuji X-T30 has a 26 megapixel sensor, which really isn't that much of a difference from the 24 megapixel sensor. However, it does 8 frames per second in mechanical shutter mode and 20 frames per second in electronic shutter mode. That is super fast. And when it comes to the Fuji cameras, you don't have to sacrifice color science or RAW capabilities because it actually has better color science and better RAW capabilities. They actually have built-in film emulations, which gives you the look of vintage film or 35mm film built right into the camera, which are extremely accurate. I highly recommend using Fuji cameras if you simply want to give your photos a unique look. And on top of that, all of the Fuji cameras shoot 14-bit RAW, which gives you a ton of flexibility when it comes to RAW editing, even more so than the Nikon D3500. And in case you were wondering, when it comes to autofocus, it is super fast and reliable in photo mode. However, it's not quite that good in video mode, but again, this is a best photography camera video, not a best camera for video. You know what I mean. But if you are someone that's looking for a camera that's really good at video, I highly recommend going to the main channel and checking out the video on best video cameras. And lastly, let's talk about the body, because this is one of the most unique looking cameras on the market today. The body is actually designed to look like a vintage camera from the 40s or 60s because Fuji as a company was actually started back then and they used to make vintage cameras. However, it still has all the modern buttons and features that you would expect on a new camera. So you can use this like a modern camera or a vintage camera, but it simply is a very unique looking camera. And you probably guessed this, but this camera actually has an articulating screen. Sadly, you can't flip it around to see yourself, but it is super useful for when you want to take high angle or low angle shots. And one of the things that I love about this camera is that they even added an extra axis on the screen for shooting portraits in vertical mode. By the way, if you're interested in getting paid to own camera gear, I've got some really good news for you. A lot of you guys probably know me as the guy from YouTube, but what most of you guys probably don't know is that I also work in the film industry as a director and cinematographer. I've actually worked with brands like Nike, Canada Goose, and Lululemon, and I've shot award-winning music videos and films. Not only that, but I've also helped a lot of my friends and coworkers turn their casual interest in photography and video into a high-paying side hustle. So it only made sense to show you guys how to do the exact same thing. I'm gonna show you guys how to take a beginner or intermediate level camera and use that to start a profitable side hustle or even a full-time career with my new course, Side Hustle Pro. And I know what you're thinking. You either feel like you don't have the skills, you don't have the time, or you don't have the money to invest to get high-paying clients, but never fear. I made this course specifically for people that have a passion for photography and video because I'm going to show you step by step how to make everything else happen. This course is for somebody that either doesn't want to quit their full-time job or simply doesn't feel comfortable, but they do want to start making a few $1,000s a month. This course would be perfect for a student that wants to make a little bit of side cash, or the engineer or accountant that wants to keep their full-time job but simply wants to start making a few thousand extra dollars per month, or somebody that even wants to turn this into a full-time career and simply wants to get the best start possible. We're going to show you how to make your work look unique and cinematic, but ultimately, we're going to show you how to create and maintain relationships with high-paying clients. And all of this without needing to devote full-time hours. And for those of you who eventually want to turn your high-paying side hustle into a full-time career, we also have the Pro Focus module. In that module, we show you how to get into music videos, films, and commercials, not only how to get in there, but also how to maintain a thriving career. And every single one of those modules also has a guest expert that is highly successful in that field. And for anybody watching this video and signing up with the link down below, you'll also get my cinematic LUT pack and Lightroom presets for completely free. so you can make your work look exactly like mine. So if I have your attention and this is something you're definitely interested in, check out the link down below for the Side Hustle Pro course. And we're back. So finally, let's look at the last camera on the list, and this camera is perfect for someone that's shooting themselves a lot. The Canon M50 is primarily a video camera, but if you're somebody that needs to photograph themselves a lot, it does have a side articulating flip out screen with amazing autofocus that makes it ideal for the job. It has a 24 megapixel sensor, which is actually the same sensor as the Canon T7. Again, like I said earlier, all of the Canon cameras all have that same 24 megapixel sensor, which is why all of their cameras look great. Photo-wise, it does 10 frames per second, which is pretty fast. So whether you're shooting yourself or action, that camera is going to keep up with you. But what really makes this camera special is that dual pixel autofocusing system. The autofocusing system can intelligently track faces and objects even as the camera is moving around. So if you're shooting yourself, you will have no worries about getting yourself in focus because the camera actually knows you're a person. It's going to make sure your face is always sharp. The only thing that I don't like about this camera is that it does have a smaller mirrorless body, which I kind of don't like when I compare to a DSLR camera, because when it comes to photos, I want something nice, beefy, and robust in my hands. And also, I find that the M50 mirrorless body doesn't have quite as many buttons as I would like compared to a DSLR. However, the thing that kind of makes it okay for me is the fact that this camera does have a side articulating screen, but it also has a touch screen, and that touch screen is super easy to navigate this camera with. A lot of times I don't really even use the button and I just use that touchscreen. It is super fast, super responsive, and it's really fun to use. So if you're somebody that wants a fast shooting camera with great Canon color science, plus you need to be able to see yourself, the Canon M50 would be a fantastic fit for you. Well guys, that's pretty much it for my favorite photography cameras. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all of our future content. And if you want to turn your passion for photography and video into a full-time hustle, make sure to check out the Side Hustle Pro course down below.